When I was 8, my mother sat me on the edge of her bed while she plucked the pins from her hair, one by one. Her silhouette was backlit by the soft yellow of the vanity bulb. Her voice was steady, low, the way it got when she wanted to be remembered. "Some people are born prey," she said, twisting a strand of dark hair around her finger like a snare. Soft, sweet, and made for devouring. She looked at me in the mirror. "But not you, Clara. You're a thorn bush. Let them bleed when they try to pick you." I nodded. I didn't fully understand, but I believed her. I think I had to. I wanted to believe that something in me was sharp, something worth fearing. I wanted to believe I couldn't be broken. That was before I knew how often thorn bushes are mistaken for something delicate. I married Julian when I was 22. I shouldn't have. He was older. 37. Smiled like he knew secrets about you. Told stories that didn't quite add up but always sounded too good to question. His charm was a lacquer, glossy and thin, beautiful, until it cracked. At first, he made me feel chosen. Like I'd stepped into some cinematic version of adulthood, champagne, flutes, piano bars, long drives through the city with jazz humming through the speakers. But love like that is just a disguise. And he wore it well. He was the kind of man who bought you roses on Wednesday and then blamed you when they wilted by Friday. "You don't trim the stems," he'd say. "You leave them out of water. You let things die." One night, after he'd disappeared for 3 days without a word, I confronted him. "Where were you?" I asked. My voice was calm, too calm. I'd rehearsed it. He didn't look up from his drink. "Jesus, Clara. You always assume the worst." "I assume what you show me," I snapped. He stood, slow, the glass still in his hand. "You're so damn sensitive," he hissed, stepping closer. "You twist everything I do into some attack. Your tears aren't real, they're a performance." My breath caught in my throat. "You make me cheat," he said, like it was a mercy. "You make it impossible not to." I believed it. Eventually, I believed it. We lived in a house on the edge of nowhere, 5 acres, 3 bedrooms, and silence you could drown in. The nights were black as oil. You couldn't hear anything but the wind pressing against the windows like a ghost. There was a scar on the hardwood floor in the hallway, long, jagged, cruel. From the night he threw my perfume bottle during an argument I can't even remember anymore. It hit the wall and exploded, the scent of lilacs hanging in the air like a taunt. I would lie in bed at night and trace that scar with my eyes. A wound in the wood, like mine, visible, but ignored. I didn't cry anymore. I think I was afraid that if I started, I wouldn't know how to stop. Julian had a best friend, David. Tall, reserved, with a voice like a lock clicking into place. A lawyer, meticulous and quiet. He never said much, but he looked at me like he saw everything I was trying to hide. When I got the flu one winter, Julian left for a meeting. David brought me tea in a ceramic cup with violets painted along the rim. "Chamomile," he said, setting it down gently. "Helps with sleep." "Thank you," I whispered, surprised by the kindness. He offered a small smile. "You look tired." I didn't reply. What could I say? That I was more than tired, I was unraveling. One night, I found Julian passed out drunk on the patio, mouth slightly open, his phone buzzing beside him with a text from someone named Lexi. David was in the kitchen, elbows on the table, staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. I stepped inside quietly, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, and slid it toward him. He didn't look up. Just said, "You could leave, you know." I sat across from him. "I can't." He finally met my gaze. "You think he'll change?" I laughed. Not a joyful sound. Bitter. Hollow. "No. I just don't think I'm allowed to want more." He stared at me, eyes narrowing slightly, like I just confessed something awful. Like he pitied me. Like he was planning something. Julian died 3 months later. Drunk driving. It was raining that night, sheets of silver falling sideways, like the sky was trying to wash something clean. He hit a guardrail at 70 miles an hour, clipped it, and didn't even tap the brakes before wrapping the car around an oak tree. The officer at my door had eyes that darted everywhere but my face. "We're sorry for your loss," he said. I blinked. "Are you?" He paused, then shifted uncomfortably. "He died on impact. That was supposed to be a mercy." I nodded, thanked him like a good widow, and closed the door with the same care I might use for a sleeping baby. People called it a tragedy. Co-workers. Distant family. The pastor who hadn't seen him in years but still insisted on reading Psalm 23 at the funeral. They whispered "poor thing" when they saw me in black. Whispered it like I'd just misplaced a wallet, not a husband. I called it Tuesday. At the funeral, the air smelled like lilies and overripe sympathy. People cried. I didn't. My tears had dried up somewhere around year 4 of the marriage. David stood beside me, clean-shaven, composed in a navy suit. He didn't touch me, not really, but his hand grazed mine just enough that I felt the whisper of contact. I almost flinched. "You're free now," he whispered. I nodded. But I didn't feel free. I felt like a prisoner who'd been transferred to a different cell, new walls, same bars. After the last handful of dirt hit the coffin, after the casseroles and condolences, David stayed behind. We sat on the back porch, him with a beer, me with nothing. "I can help you with the estate," he said. "I don't want help," I replied. He looked at me. "You don't have to do everything alone." "I know," I lied. For a while, David became everything. He was quiet in a way that didn't press on my nerves. He made dinner without making a show of it. When I cried, rarely, quietly, he didn't rush to fix it. He just sat with me, like the silence between us was enough. We talked late into the night. He shared stories I'd never heard, about his childhood, about cases he'd lost and how they haunted him. He told me about his sister who ran away at 16 and was never found. I told him about the time Julian locked me outside in an hour in the snow because I'd ruined the mood. He didn't interrupt. He just handed me a blanket. I told myself this was different. That I could start over. That lightning didn't strike the same heart twice. We got married 2 years later. It wasn't. The betrayal didn't come with fireworks. It came like rust, slow, creeping, undeniable. At first, it was just late nights at the office. Work stress. A locked phone when he'd never locked it before. Then the way he began turning questions into accusations. "Why are you asking? Don't you trust me? You're imagining things again, Clara." One night, he came home smelling like a perfume I didn't wear. Not floral. Something sugary and young. I stared at him from across the kitchen island. "You are working late at a candy shop now?" I asked. He looked at me, jaw twitching. "Don't be ridiculous." Eventually, I stopped asking. I started watching. The messages were on his tablet. Carelessly synced, like arrogance had made him sloppy. Or maybe he wanted to be caught. Maybe part of him wanted to hurt me in a way that couldn't be brushed away with flowers or apologies. Her name was Elise. 29. Blonde. A dental hygienist, if the sterile white scrubs and mirror selfies were to be believed. She looked like someone from a toothpaste commercial, too bright, too clean, too untouched by consequence. She sent him pictures, legs curled under hotel sheets, lips puckered like a teenager's idea of seduction. Provocative. Ridiculous. filtered within an inch of reality, every image a lie dressed up as a fantasy. She called him baby. He called her sweet thing. She wrote, "You're not like other men." And he wrote back, "God, I needed to hear that." Like he was starving for praise. Like my loyalty, my love, my years meant less than a few saccharine lines typed from a bathroom stall. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. My coffee cooled beside me, forgotten. Outside, the light shifted across the kitchen tile, turning golden, then pale again. It was like time stopped for me, but not for the world. Something inside me cracked, quiet and permanent, like a plate dropped on carpet. No shatter, no mess, just broken, in a way I knew I'd never fix. When he got home that night, I was waiting. I sat at the kitchen table with the tablet in front of me, like evidence in a trial I hadn't realized I was prosecuting until the moment arrived. He came in humming. Tossed his keys in the bowl. Looked at me and then at the screen. "You left your tablet unlocked," I said, my voice low, almost conversational. I lifted it with both hands, even though it felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Like it might crumble me beneath it. He glanced at it, then shrugged. A one-shoulder, indifferent gesture, like I'd just asked him to take the trash out. "So," he said. That word landed like a slap. "So?" I repeated, stunned. "Is that all you've got?" He exhaled, as if I were the one being unreasonable. As if his betrayal were a mere inconvenience. "She listens to me," he muttered as he moved past me, his tone defensive, dismissive. "She doesn't hover." I laughed. The sound startled even me, sharp, ugly, not a laugh at all but something twisted and bitter. A final crack in something already splintered. "Hover?" I said, standing. "That's what you call caring now?" He turned just slightly, not enough to meet my eyes. "You suffocate people, Clara." That stopped me. Not because it hurt, but because it was expected. Like he'd had the line rehearsed for months, waiting for the perfect moment to use it. "And you betray them," I said, the words trembling with the fury I'd been biting back for far too long. He didn't answer. We didn't speak again for 3 days. He moved out 2 weeks later. No explanation. No apology. No closure. Just vanished like smoke through a keyhole. And I was left in the house we'd filled with lies, surrounded by silence, and the scent of old flowers turning to rot. Then came the financial fallout. One morning, I got a call from my bank. They needed to verify a withdrawal. "What withdrawal?" I asked. A week later, I sat across from my lawyer, a man in a gray suit who kept looking at me like I'd broken something fragile in front of him. "There's nothing left," he said, flipping through the papers. He siphoned everything into offshore accounts. "Your name's not on any of it." I stared at the marble pattern of his desk. "He did it before he left, didn't he?" He hesitated. "Yes. Months before." And just like that, I was 41, alone, broke, and back in the house with the scarred floorboards, except now the walls echoed with even less than before. I got a job at a florist's downtown. It wasn't part of any grand plan. I was walking past the shop one afternoon, desperate to be anywhere but my own thoughts, when I saw the sign, "Help Wanted, Inquire Within." The shop was small, tucked between a dusty antique store and a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and second chances. The window was misted from the humidity inside, but I could see bursts of color, roses, hydrangeas, lilies, arranged in messy, joyful chaos. I walked in, mostly out of impulse. The bell above the door gave a tired chime, and the scent hit me immediately, earth, green stems, and something sugary that reminded me of the honeysuckle that used to grow wild outside my childhood bedroom. A woman emerged from behind a wall of sunflowers, wiping her hands on a green faded apron. "You here for the flowers or the job?" she asked, sizing me up like she already knew the answer. I don't know, I admitted. She raised an eyebrow. Honesty. That's rare. Her name was Maggie. Late 60s, maybe early 70s. No makeup, but eyes that missed nothing. She had the kind of presence that made you stand up straighter without knowing why. She didn't ask for a resume. Just studied me for a long moment, then said, "You've got the look of someone who knows how to hold fragile things." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but all that came out was a strange, choked laugh. A sound halfway between agreement and disbelief. She nodded. "Start tomorrow. 6 sharp." On my first day, Maggie handed me a pair of shears and a list of flower names that might as well have been ancient Greek. "Lisianthus," she said, holding up a delicate white bloom. "Looks like a rose. Wilts like a diva." I took it carefully, like it might bruise under my fingertips. She watched me for a beat. "You've been through something," she said, not as a question, but a truth. I didn't answer. Just kept arranging the stems into a vase that seemed too wide, too empty. Maggie didn't push. That was her way. She let people come to her in pieces, like petals falling naturally in their own time. I wore a velvet scarf every day, deep burgundy, soft as a whisper. It had become part of my armor. The one luxury I hadn't pawned, hadn't burned, hadn't buried in a memory box. Julian gave it to me once, after a particularly cruel night. There'd been shouting, a slammed door, and a bruise the shape of regret blooming just below my jaw. The next morning, he brought the scarf. "Saw it in a window," he'd said. "It matches your lips." I'd taken it. Not out of forgiveness, but because something in its texture reminded me of who I used to be, before him. Someone soft, yes, but not weak. Now, it was mine. A choice, not a cover. Customers noticed. "That's beautiful," a woman said once. "Is it vintage?" another asked. I always smiled the same way. A gentle curve of the lips, a shrug of the shoulder. "Yes," I said. "It is." They didn't need to know what it covered. That the scarf wrapped around not just my neck, but years of silence, years of swallowing myself so someone else could feel big. One day, Elise walked into the shop. The air changed the moment she stepped inside. Light heels. Cream sweater. Lip gloss so shiny it could signal aircraft. I recognized her instantly. The curve of her mouth, the way she tilted her head when she smiled, like she was used to being adored. She didn't recognize me. She looked right through me. "White lilies," she said brightly. "For my mother's birthday." She always said they look like they're listening. I nodded. My hands moved automatically, reaching for the stems, trimming the edges. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't let them. I wrapped the bouquet in pale tissue and tied it with a silver ribbon. "That's beautiful," she said. Then her eyes flicked to my scarf. "Is that vintage?" I met her gaze for a heartbeat too long. "Yes," I said. "It is." She smiled again, breezy and oblivious, then turned and walked out with the lilies cradled in her arms. I watched her disappear down the street, her blonde hair catching the light. And thought, she doesn't know. He cheats on her too. It was 6 months later that the letter came. I almost missed it. The envelope was cream-colored, unmarked, tucked between a grocery store flyer and a pre-approved credit card offer. No return address. Just my name. Clara Morgan, written in careful, blocky handwriting I didn't recognize. I stood there for a moment in the doorway of the flower shop, keys in one hand, mail in the other. The afternoon sun filtered through the glass behind me, catching on the edges of petals in the window display. A wind chime tinkled softly somewhere behind the shop. I felt a chill anyway. I took it inside, peeled off my scarf, hung it on the hook by the register like I always did, then sat at the work table in the back. My fingers trembled as I slit the envelope open with the blade we usually used for trimming flower stems. Inside was a single photograph. It wasn't new. The edges were worn, the colors slightly faded. 4 people sat at a yacht table, all laughter and champagne flutes: Julian, David, Elise, and another woman I didn't recognize. Julian had his arms slung over David's shoulder like they were lifelong brothers, not men who had carved pieces out of me over time. Elise leaned in toward the other woman, her mouth caught mid-laugh. They all looked happy. Carefree. Rich. Like people who had just pulled off something and toasted to the spoils. I flipped the photo over. A sticky note clung to the back. Pale yellow. Just 4 words, handwritten in tight, neat penmanship. You were never prey. Underneath it, smaller. You were always the plan. I don't remember sitting down. But I must have. Because when Maggie found me hours later, the sun had gone down and the shop was dark, save for the faint glow from the little lamp in the corner. The envelope was still clutched in my hand. She flicked on the lights, squinting at me. Clara, she said softly, like approaching a wounded animal. I blinked at her. My throat was dry, my voice a rasp. Someone sent me a photograph. She walked closer, carefully, slowly. And what's in the photograph? Proof, I whispered. Of everything. I showed her. Her mouth flattened into a line as she looked it over. Who sent it? I shook my head. I don't know. But someone wanted me to see. Maggie sat beside me. She didn't touch me at first. Just sat in silence the way real friends do when there's nothing to say that would matter. After a long pause, she placed her hand over mine. Tell me. So, I did. I told her about Julian's death. The life insurance. How David had moved in the same week, told me we'd finally start over. How he'd said all the right things until I stopped doubting myself, and then used my trust like a crowbar. I told her about Elise. The tablet. The pictures. The offshore account I never knew existed. And now, this. I thought I was just unlucky, I said, my voice barely audible. Like maybe I kept choosing the wrong people. No, Maggie said. They chose you. Big difference. I looked down at the scarf in my lap. I had loosened it earlier, and now it draped around my arms like silk chains. I clenched a fistful of it, feeling the familiar burn rise behind my eyes. I can't even cry, I said. Good, she said. Save your tears. You'll need your fire more than your water now. 3 weeks later, I saw David on the news. It was a Thursday. I remember because the shop was unusually slow, and I'd decided to reorganize the display window. Violets and daffodils, mostly. Something about that combination always felt like a small rebellion, fragile and fierce at the same time. I was halfway through sweeping fallen petals off the floor when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Maggie. 1 word in all caps. Turn on the TV. I stared at the screen for a beat, heart already tightening. I didn't want to know. But of course, I did. The small TV mounted above the register was usually reserved for midday soap operas and weather updates. But I clicked it on, and the volume swelled into the silence of the shop. Facing multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Authorities confirmed that David Hallstrom and Elise Bennett, once dubbed the Golden Couple of the East Bay, have been under investigation for more than a year. The screen showed a grainy shot of them in handcuffs, being led into a courthouse. Elise was trying to duck her head, a jacket pulled up around her face. David walked stiffly beside her, jaw tight, eyes hollow. The anchor continued. What's shocking is the scale of the operation: offshore shell accounts, fake nonprofits, falsified property investments. According to sources close to the investigation, they may have laundered over $6 million through a web of companies and clients, some of whom were allegedly unaware of their involvement. Unaware. That word stuck in my throat like ash. I gripped the edge of the counter. Not out of grief. Not even satisfaction. Just a kind of heavy, humming calm. Like the moment right before a storm finally breaks, and the air is electric with everything you already knew was coming. They'd been arrested. The story was everywhere. Social media, news apps, even tabloids that usually reported on celebrity divorces and weight loss scandals. Beautiful and dangerous, one headline said. Lovers or liars? I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clarified. Like every piece that hadn't made sense, every cruel smirk, every untraceable deposit, every night I sat up wondering if I was imagining it, had suddenly lined up in rows under a white-hot spotlight. They weren't brilliant con artists. They were predictable ones. But the twist wasn't them. The twist was me. Because I'd stopped being the woman who flinched when someone raised their voice. The woman who apologized for taking up too much space. The woman who thought maybe if she loved better, harder, quieter, she could earn safety. No. I was someone else now. I was the woman who didn't call the cops when the envelope arrived. I was the woman who went looking for Rose. Because I knew someone. Her name was Roslyn, though everyone just called her Rose. We'd met years ago, at one of Julian's networking events. She was there with a venture capitalist who wore a smug smile and a pocket square that screamed midlife crisis. She'd slipped away from him halfway through dinner and found me at the bar, drinking seltzer and watching the room like it was a zoo I'd accidentally wandered into. She'd introduced herself by leaning on the counter beside me and saying, "You look like someone who sees everything but says nothing." That's a dangerous talent. I remember blinking at her. I'm married. She grinned. So am I. To my job. She's a cruel mistress but pays well. And that was Rose. Curious. Cool. Sharp as cut glass. We kept in touch on and off after that. A few emails. One wild night out where she taught me how to pick a padlock in under 2 minutes using only a bobby pin and a wine key. She was what Julian called bad news, which meant I liked her immediately. I hadn't spoken to her in over a decade. But people like Rose don't disappear. They just get harder to find. I found her again. Not through LinkedIn or Facebook, no, Rose was smarter than that. I reached out through a closed tech forum she once mentioned in passing, back when she was tipsy and bragging about rerouting a senator's VPN for fun. It took 3 messages, 2 burner email accounts, and a weirdly specific joke about a Bitcoin wallet hidden in a ceramic owl before she responded. The reply was short. Bring tea. Real tea. And a list. We met at a midnight diner on the edge of town. Rose looked exactly the same. Cropped black hair, silver rings on every finger, a t-shirt that read "I void warranties." Her eyes didn't blink much. When they did, it felt like a deliberate choice. She stirred sugar into her coffee with a fork. "So," she said, "tell me who needs to burn." I slid the envelope across the table. The photo. The note. A thumb drive with everything I'd gathered, bank statements, timelines, screenshots from David's tablet, Julian's will. Rose studied the photo. God, they even look smug in 480p. She flipped it over, read the note, then looked up at me. "Did you write this?" "No." Her gaze sharpened. "You sure?" I nodded. But I kept it. Because I needed to believe someone saw what I didn't. Rose tilted her head, like she was inspecting a puzzle. "You want revenge?" I took a breath. "I want justice. Quiet justice. The kind that doesn't announce itself but leaves marks." She leaned back in the booth, smiling. "Oh honey. That's my favorite kind." It took time. Rose moved like a ghost with a laptop. She worked odd hours, sent encrypted updates, occasionally called from blocked numbers to ask strange questions like, "Do you remember the name of Julian's old accountant? Was he afraid of flying, and how does David spell his middle name on legal documents?" 3 weeks turned into 6. Then one day, I opened an email with no subject line. Just a file. And a message. They never knew how loud their footprints were. I lit the trail. Inside the file, spreadsheets. Bank routing numbers. Shell corporations with names like Oakshade Capital and Silverpoint Holdings. Emails between David and a man in the Cayman Islands discussing delicate transfers. One flagged folder, Julian, policy. In it, scans of paperwork with digital timestamps, showing Julian had changed the life insurance policy months before his death, naming David as the primary beneficiary. A move Julian would never have made on his own. He barely understood online banking. Someone had guided his hand. Or forged it. And there it was, Rose had found it all. We sent everything to the feds. Anonymously. A clean thumb drive. No fingerprints. No name. Just a drop point and a little note. Follow the paper. The blood's already dried. And then I waited. And watched. And when they were arrested, I didn't feel triumph. I felt still. Like a bell had finally stopped ringing in my head. The last time I saw Elise was in court. She wore a blazer too big for her shoulders and a shade of lipstick that tried too hard. The courtroom was freezing, the kind of institutional cold that sinks into your bones and makes even truth feel like a fabrication. I sat 3 rows behind the prosecution bench. Alone. No lawyer beside me. No entourage. Just me and the scarf at my throat. She didn't look at me. Not once. David, though, he did. He turned in the slow, deliberate way of a man who knows his performance is being watched from every angle. His eyes scanned the courtroom until they found mine. For a split second, the mask slipped. There was no smirk. No smolder. Just something brittle behind his gaze of a recognition, maybe. Or fear. I smiled. Not a sweet smile. Not cruel either. Just calm. Like someone who'd finally put the last piece of a broken mirror back together, sharp edges and all. He looked away first. The trial lasted 6 weeks. I went to almost every hearing. Not out of spite. Not even curiosity. I went because I wanted to see the truth laid bare. I wanted it all on record, every lie, every transaction, every manipulation dissected under fluorescent lights and legal jargon. Their lawyers tried everything. Claimed coercion. Claimed ignorance. Claimed they were in love, as if those excused millions stolen and lives upended. But the paper trail didn't lie. Rose had made sure of that. There was a moment at day 15, I think, when Elise broke down on the stand. Cried into her hands and said, "I didn't know he was married when we met. He told me she was dangerous." I didn't flinch. Because by then, I was. Now. I own the flower shop. Maggie retired 2 months after the verdict came down. Left me the keys, the lease, the accounts, everything. "You gave it more light," she told me. "I only ever kept the flowers alive. You made them bloom." It was the closest anyone had ever come to telling me they saw me clearly. I still wear the scarf. It's fraying a little now at the seams. The velvet has worn down in places, like the surface of an old river rock. But I wear it not to cover anything, not anymore. I wear it to remember. Of how many lives I've lived inside one body. Of how many times I was buried, and still clawed my way up, fingers bloodied, breath ragged, soul intact. People still ask about it sometimes. "That's beautiful," they say. "Is it vintage?" And I smile. It is. One day, a young woman came into the shop. She had honey-colored hair tied back in a loose braid, and a bruise on her wrist that pulsed like a secret. She didn't speak much, just stood quietly by the violets, her fingers trembling as they brushed the petals. I didn't ask questions. I made her tea. Rooibos and lavender, with a little honey. Then I set a bundle of stems in front of her. "You can help me arrange these," I said gently. "Only if you want to." She nodded. Her hands shook, but she didn't drop a single flower. When she cried, I didn't try to stop her. I didn't pat her back or tell her it would be okay. I just let her cry. Because sometimes, the best thing you can give someone is space to break apart. You can stay as long as you need, I told her. And I meant it. Because that's the secret, isn't it? You survive the torment by building a house out of it. And then you open the door for someone else. I wasn't prey. I wasn't even the thorn bush. I was the fire. And I lit the match myself.